Bienvenidos y bienvenida a otro episodio de La Mogolla. Hoy tengo como invitado a mi amigo James Lewis Charles de Haití. James habla un poquito español, pero para hacerlo sentir más cómodo, ¿no? Y que la conversación fluya,
Sí.
pues haremos la conversación en inglés, ya que lo domina. Yo no sé nada de creol, así que no podemos hablar en creol, pero pronto me gustaría aprenderlo, ¿no? Para comunicarme bien con nuestros hermanos y hermanas allá en Haití. Así que recuerden siempre las redes sociales, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, como La Mogolla PR. Y también estamos en Spotify, Apple Podcast, para las personas que solamente nos escuchan. What's going on, James? How are you?
I'm great, man. And you?
I'm doing well. Thank you
That's
so
great.
much for your time. I understand that you flew to Haiti this morning.
I did. I arrived back this morning after being out of the country for about a month.
A month.
So, yeah.
That's nice. And how many times a year do you travel to Haiti and back?
So I'm into education. So whenever we have a break from school, I usually go to the States, to DC where my parents were at.
Okay.
But and to be fair, also it's needed. It's needed because the situation down here can be stressful at times. So to get a break from it, it's welcome.
It's understandable. Yeah. And how long have you been in Washington, D.C.?
I moved to the U.S. when I was 13. So you could say, for a while, I spent a lot of my early years, teenage years, and also my adult years in the DC area, where I went to university there, and then a couple of years ago, I decided to do a master in sports for development, which is really my field.
Okay.
I'm an educator and I'm an athlete. So at which point I decided to come back to Haiti to see if maybe we can do more with that field. So
Okay. And before entering and when how you're helping Haiti's youth with sports, what sports did you practice as when you were a student, when you were young, or still? I don't know if you still play anything.
well, I still try to play, but my knees are not so great anymore. So, but football, what you call football or we call soccer in the
Okay.
US,
Yeah.
is the number one sport here in Haiti. Like, whether it's Brazil or Argentina that's playing, people here just go crazy. So I grew up in that environment as a child when Haiti made it to the World Cup.
Yeah.
And I grew up listening to stories about the days Haiti made it to the World Cup. I was like, that's it. I'm gonna grow up and be the next soccer player to get Haiti back in the World Cup. Obviously that didn't happen, but I still think there's a lot of talent here. There's a lot of potential. It's just people here, unfortunately, don't have the same opportunities as they do in other countries to make it happen.
I understand. And it's not surprising, that soccer is huge in Haiti. I'm not a soccer fan at all. I do have friends that watch it, but I do admit that that's the number one sport in the world. How people are so passionate about it, right? It's
Exactly.
amazing how it captivated so many countries, regardless of language and culture, and just nations. It transcends all of that.
Correct. Well, exactly. I think the popularity in soccer is the fact that, unlike other sports, I know in Puerto Rico or in other some Latin American countries, they love baseball,
Yeah.
but it's an expensive sport, right? You have to
Yeah.
buy the gloves, you have to buy the bats. In soccer, all you need is a soccer ball. So it's very common to see kids playing barefoot in the street. In fact, I grew up playing barefoot in the street in front of my house. And that's why soccer is really the people's sport.
Yeah.
It's a cheap sport to play, really.
So I'm really curious, how was your youth in Haiti? Those memories that you have as a child, because we see the world really different, right? Compared when we're children and when we're adults. I had a great childhood, right? I wasn't born rich or anything like that, but I really didn't need anything, right? But when I look back now as an adult, it wasn't that we were well off. It was that we did we did the best that we could with the little that we had, right? And it was a beautiful childhood. I love playing, but I'm really curious about other folks, right? How they've grown in different conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But their mentality obviously is different, and maybe that helps them, overcome all the adversity in their lives, right? But how was your upbringing in Haiti until you
No,
turned 13?
correct. No, that's a very good question. Look, uh, first of all, my parents came from nothing. They came from nothing, and they were able to make themselves as educators. Um, in the capital, they somewhat became successful because they became professionals in a period where there was a lot of support that was given to the dictatorship at the time, because he was a pro-US dictatorship. So the middle class grew at that time. So my parents being educators, my dad started a school, and he was able to, with that school, somewhat do well for himself. So having said that, we also had family members that had migrated to the US mostly for political reasons, because we lost family members to the dictatorship. Um, and as such, our family members in the States were struggling. They went to places like New York, typical Caribbean places, right?
Yeah.
Where they're working, hardly have time to raise their kids. So what they did instead is they would send their kids to my parents in Haiti. So I grew up literally with my cousins. I mean, my parents have 6 kids. And then I think at one point we had something like 15, 16, 17 kids in the house.
Wow.
So it was like the best environment. It was like some of my earliest childhood memories was like perfect, man. Like you wanted to play soccer? We got a soccer team. We got 2 soccer teams in the house.
You have an army. You have an army.
Oh man, that was it. My neighbors, my neighbors' kids wanted to go to our house to have fun. That's where we grew up.
Yeah.
That's where we grew up. But unfortunately, as things started to deteriorate politically, my aunts and uncles started to take their kids out of their house and bring them back to the States, et cetera, et cetera. I'm the youngest out of 6, so my older siblings were sent to the States as well. And then at one time, it was just my brother and I in the house. So it was tough. It was tough. But and then we were sent to the States at 13.
It's a great example of how imperialism and dictatorships, right, and political unrest could mess up something beautiful, right? Because in the end of the day, during these power struggles, the nations the folks are the ones that really suffer. Regular human beings like you and I are the ones that are at the expense of whatever they decide up there, right? And it's sad, right? So you had to move to the U.S. at 13. Okay, and how was your experience in the U.S. coming to a new country, learning a new language? Did you know English coming in, or did you learn it in the U.S.? How was that process?
No, good question. I knew some English because we would actually. I was sent to the States a few summers prior to that to spend some time with my cousins and my aunts. And my idea of the States was literally a 2-bedroom apartments in the Bronx, somewhere, with almost similar situation with my aunt, with my uncle, and then 5, 6 kids. So for me, that was the United States. Those 2-bedroom apartments, and then we had to wait for them to come home so that they could at least take us out to go to the park or something, right? So, but I was much surprised when we were sent to the States at 13 to leave and not to just for vacation. And we had some family members that were in the DC area. And I was very surprised to go to the DC area and actually realize, hey, people have houses here. People have yards. So, it was a different experience. But it was still a tough experience for me. Haiti was in the news for all the wrong reason at the time. We're talking about a period where there was refugees trying to make it to Florida by boat. A lot of them were intercepted and sent to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And then as a child, and again, growing up as a child, I was very, very popular, very well-liked, being put in a situation where now I'm being bullied by everybody. and even worse by people that look like me.
Mm.
So it was tough. It was tough, and I think, you know, I can still remember being the kid in the back of the classroom trying to not look for attention because I didn't want any. To me, this is foreign, and I was, yeah, it wasn't comfortable at all.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad. I can't imagine you being 13, being adjusted to being around so many kids, playing around, being liked, and then out of nowhere, now you have the whole world against you, right?
Exactly.
In the eyes of a kid, that must be devastating,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
especially folks that look like you said. You're experiencing right there the consequences of divide and conquer, right? How we've been basically kidnapped from West Africa, right? From different nations of West Africa, and just divided throughout, or just used around the world as slaves, right? And a lot of African Americans here in the US don't understand that the boats shipped first to the Caribbean,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then came to the continental US. So there's also African folks in our islands, right?
Correct. Yeah.
We just talk a different language because we've been colonized by different folks. But in the end of the day, we all been colonized. We all been through the same struggle. And it's sad, right, that we don't know each other as we should.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to also invite you here and talk about it a little bit more, and just have a good perspective from a Haitian. You see what I'm saying? It's something that I think it's needed. So yeah, so you as a kid, to overcome all this stress and all this repression in your mind due to the bullying, did you stick with sports to really overcome all the pain?
That's you hit it right there. That's exactly what I did. I started to play soccer,
Yeah.
and sorry, I started to play soccer, and for me, soccer was the best. How can I say this? The best thing that I could have done.
Hmm.
It basically it allowed me the space to be a child. It allowed
Hmm.
me the space to be well liked again, um, and and yeah, and I became somewhat of a soccer star um, for my high school. But yeah, yeah, for sure.
What soccer players did you admire growing up?
Oh man, a lot of the French soccer players, Thierry Henry, um, of course, Maradona.
Maradona.
Yeah, yeah, and
May he rest in power. He
yeah,
passed not too long ago. Yeah.
exactly. So, but
How
yeah,
about
yeah.
Pelé from Brazil?
Of course, I mean, you mentioned Pele. Everybody in Haiti knows Pele. Everybody in
Yeah,
Haiti, all over the world knows Pele. So, but yeah, yeah, for sure.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And how was your connection with the U.S. afterwards, becoming a teenager and an adult? Did you stick to D.C.? Because I understand there's a lot of ethnicities in D.C.
Correct.
Right?
So, um, interestingly enough, I mean, I think when I moved to DC, there weren't that many Haitians there. I think the few Haitians that in that area were somewhat related to my family.
Okay.
You know, in fact, I remember the story where at the university, I had a professor, for whatever reason, she felt like maybe she wanted to set me up with somebody,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, what's up? What is this all about? And come to find out, she was teaching at another university, and the person that she was going to set me up with was my cousin.
Mm,
So just to give you an idea of how small DC was at the time.
yeah.
But I also went in a period where um, a lot of Haitians, a lot of second generation or first generation Haitians,
Yeah.
kids of Haitian immigrants started to go in to DC and work as interns for the federal government. So I got involved with it with a Haitian professional organization,
Hmm.
and it was interesting to see the change happening and be a part of it. You know,
Yeah.
but now DC is definitely definitely has a big Haitian community there.
Yeah, I remember. I was born in Buffalo, New York, and I remember growing up. My parents were pastors,
Mm.
and I remember having uh, Haitian members at church. And I remember this particular lady. Her name was Sarah, and she would teach my mother Creole. And I was too young, right? I was playing around and whatnot. But now looking back, I'm like, man, I had the opportunity to really absorb that language, and learn it, right?
Mhm, mhm,
But I was a kid, I was like 5 or 6. But I always remember Haitians being around and being a part of our community as well in
mhm,
West Side Buffalo.
mhm.
Do you have any links with any relations with New Orleans?
To answer your question, me personally, I don't have any connection to New Orleans. I've been there a few times.
Hmm.
I've met some Haitians that have moved there,
Yeah.
that have connections there, and it was fascinating to me to see how how much of a Haitian influence New Orleans has.
Yes.
You know, for people who don't know, a lot of the Europeans, the French that were in Haiti during the colonial years, as the Haitian Revolution was happening, a lot of them went to places like the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and of course New Orleans.
Yeah.
And they took their slaves with them.
Yeah.
So from it's my understanding that initially they were not welcome because the U.S. planters, the U.S. farmers in the South were concerned that the slaves from Haiti were so corrupted with the idea of freedom that by allowing them to come into New Orleans, they were going to be able to somehow uh, corrupt the other slaves in the United States. So they were very concerned about that. But yeah, I highly recommend if people have the opportunity to go to New Orleans, because the culture there, the architecture, it's very very similar to Haiti's.
Yeah, it's beautiful. All the mixture that it has, it's that's why they call themselves the northest city of the Caribbean.
Exactly.
And you really feel that you're in the Caribbean when you're in New Orleans. I love it. I love it there. And I was curious if you had that type of connection, because they have influence from Spain, France. A lot of Cubans went to New Orleans for a good while, and Haitians as well. You
Yeah.
have that voodoo influence.
Correct. Correct.
I was really curious of uh, I felt that I was being lied to when it came to a lot of the that pop culture type of voodoo that they show, in tourism and whatever. So I went to New Orleans a few years back and spoke to a voodoo priest for like 2 hours and a half, 3 hours, and I was amazed and satisfied with the information that he was providing us with because we he dismantled a lot of lies that
Yeah.
have been like repressed when it comes to voodoo.
Mhm.
So it's something that we have to keep learning and not judge without even knowing what really what Haitians really practice, because I respect that element of the Haitian Revolution. A lot of scholars believe that, including myself, that without voodoo it would have been impossible for you guys to liberate yourselves, because it was like a common denominator within the revolutionaries, right? They understood that they needed to practice something really different, something that was psychologically that would differentiate Haitians from their colonizer, and that they were free. It's not that they wanted to be free; it's that they were psychologically already. And I
Okay,
think voodoo
exactly.
had a lot to do with that. So it's something to respect, right? Because you don't see nobody knocking on nobody else's door trying to convert you to voodoo, right? So it's a really private thing. So I respect it a lot. I don't know what your opinion is on that as a Haitian.
No, of course, of course. Look, uh, you know, for reasons you've already mentioned, and we know already that all people were kidnapped and brought
Yeah,
into the Americas, right? And they were being forced to assimilate in many ways, right?
yeah,
So what they did is they used a lot of their original religion they mix it into with the indigenous religion.
Yeah.
And then in some ways, they also use the symbols of the Catholic Church to give the oppressors the impression that they are actually complying, right?
Exactly.
So that's how you end up with voodoo. So for me, you know, I don't know much about it, but I accept it as a part of my culture.
Okay.
You know, I accept it as a part of my culture. I'm not, to be fair, also, I'm not super religious, you know, because of the fact that I know what the Catholic Church has done.
Yeah.
In my country, and I know, and I can see what missionaries continue to do or attempting to do in my country. So for me, that's also an extension of imperialism.
Yes.
Imperialism that exists today.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not very happy about that.
Yeah, very interesting. I like that you mentioned that because even though it wasn't that I was not interested in getting to that. I wasn't sure if you were or if you weren't, but I'm glad that you touched that topic because I was speaking with a friend about that recently, and she's really pro Cuban revolutionary, right? She's in favor of that Cuban Revolution, and she's noticing how it's being the jeopardy is increasing time and time again due to a lot of missionaries going to Cuba. And this is not to criticize all the missionaries in the world, because I even have family members that have done missions in the past. But what I want to say is that in the end of the day, if you study the history of the church, and the empires, you see that they have worked hand in hand for a long, long time, and religion has been used as a tool, obviously, to conquer the enslaved minds, right? To conquer their minds and keep them there, keep them in that space of oppression for long periods of time. So I think it has to be spoken about, right? We have to speak about it, and it's important for people to notice, right, how these things come into your country and infiltrate and disrupt everything. Because we were talking off air about the NGOs also, right? It's something similar, right? That they come in thinking that they're helping, or with the narrative that they're helping, and in reality, things keep getting worse, right?
Correct.
How do you feel about that now? All these organizations, nonprofits that are in Haiti.
Okay. Well, as we discussed off air, one of the reasons why I came back to Haiti is to run an NGO, right? And the NGO that I was working with, they use sports as a means for social change. And, in many ways, they did good work. They provided a space for kids, for young people to play, which is extremely important.
Yeah.
But the issue that I have, though, is the fact that, they could have done more in terms of training, in terms of providing the tool for those kids to be successful, in the future, after they leave the program, right?
Yeah.
And my issue with NGOs is a lot of them are in Haiti, but if they were making that much of a difference, why is Haiti still poor? In fact, for the last decade, 2 decades or so, the knock on Haiti has been that the government of Haiti is too corrupt, right? So there's been an international effort mainly led by the United States, to come in and influence the politics on the ground, and then in the same token, promote other services through NGOs, right? So by giving them a lot of aid money, etc., to provide the services that the government is not providing, and supposedly that's to make up for the fact that we don't trust the government, but we trust you guys.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. They're an extension of the empire.
Correct. So and yet today, Haiti is actually poorer today than it's ever been. I would almost say, as in the lowest of time of Haiti, I would probably consider today as one of the lowest, because it's that poor. It's very poor. And then to add to that, the missionaries. So Haiti is both the NGO capital of the world, and also the missionary capital of the world. So for me, the very missionaries come to Haiti, and first and foremost, their message is, we're going to save you. Why? Because you gained your independence by making a deal with the devil. That itself, that notion itself, that you're going to come in and disrespect the local culture, should have been a reason why they should have never been here to begin with.
Exactly. I totally agree. I've had this discussion with my father that was a pastor in the past. And, and I've heard certain things about voodoo, for example. That's the thing that pops up all the time. And if you notice, man, it's really a type of racist perspective, right? Like, your culture is lesser than mine, so I'm coming here to civilize you, when Haiti had the most advanced and most revolutionary constitution in the world when it became free, right? Because your constitution included the abolition of slavery, not the French constitution nor the American. Haitians really thought about freedom in a way that wasn't thought about by these empires back then. So, what are we talking about here? We need to learn more about Haiti. And also, another thing too that I despise is the lack of recognition that, thanks to Haiti and her liberating herself, the U.S. was able to increase its continental space due to buying Louisiana and moving towards the west more, right? That Louisiana purchase. So that was just because France couldn't handle Louisiana any longer because it lost to Haiti, right? It took a huge economic blow. I understand that Haiti constituted or composed like 1/3 of France's economy back then. It's amazing. So Haiti's really, really important when it comes to world history, when it comes to revolutions, when it comes to Pan-Africanism as well. It's something that I really respect. And you mentioned earlier how certain Haitians that did have slaves as well moved towards Louisiana, Cuba, and whatnot. That Puerto Rico was also another destination. For Haiti. It's really interesting.
But just to clarify, we're talking about Europeans that owned slaves during the colonial years, and that were made to flee during the Haitian Revolution, so to speak. And to add something also that you mentioned, a couple of things. Today, missionary involvement in Haiti is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay, so that's extremely important, because again, if missionaries were doing that much of a difference in Haiti, why is Haiti today still poor? Okay. And then to clarify it also, what you mentioned about the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the United States.
Exactly.
Because of the Haitian Revolution. The U.S. government was able to buy what constitutes about, 13, 14 states, right? In the Midwest, for the measly amount of $250 million in today's money, right? This is in 1806, if I'm not mistaken. Right? And then a few years down the road, the reason why France was able to sell it so cheaply for the United States is because, as you said, they wanted to concentrate on regaining their most profitable colony, which was Haiti. Right? So once they finally realized, okay, you know what, we're not actually going to get Haiti back, but we're gonna put a gun to the Haitians' head and force them to pay all the profit they would have made for France and also for the slave owners. And that amount came out to be 100 times what the United States had paid France for the Louisiana Purchase, which is in today's money, came out to be $30 billion.
Oof.
So,
taking under consideration inflation, right?
Exactly. So it took Haiti about over 100 years to pay off that debt. So, which is again a big factor as to why Haiti is where it is today. And I'm almost ashamed to say it. It's only a country by name, because when you are so dependent on aid, and I said to you earlier, to me, it's as if somebody put a gun to your head, force you to pay all of your money to them, and then now you have to go to the same people,
and ask
and
for
beg
help.
them, and beg them for pennies of your own money that they stole from you, and they call it aid. You know?
Yeah, it's a game, man.
Exactly. So do you think, if that's the reality, do you think that those countries are going to then allow you to dictate your future?
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
They're not. They're going to give you the aid with conditions.
With conditions.
You know, if you elect a government that we don't like, they're going to punish you. You're going to cut off the aid.
Yeah.
You know, if you're talking to the wrong country, say China, for example, they're going to cut off your aid. So that's what's happening here. To me, this is another form of slavery due to capitalism.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that want to reform, capitalism, and they want to reform international policy. The thing is that I think a lot of Americans, citizens, here in the U.S. are naive on the U.S.'s international policy, right? How other folks in other places, how other common folk in other places suffer from these relations, right? How are they not able to develop their own countries due to the stipulations and these dynamics and these relationships with the empires, regardless of which one it is, right? And I think a lot of people here are naive of that, and that's one of the reasons why we're not able to pinpoint, things so quickly. And obviously, they control the media as well, so it's a shame, man. It's a shame. The same thing happens with Puerto Rico. There's slight differences in different areas, but in the end of the day, it's basically the same thing, same type of oppression, same type of empire with the same types of interests, you see. And common folks are the ones that are always have to overcome all of this, right? And how do we fix this? Your style is sports, right, and youth, because I understand that Haiti. What percentage of the population is under 21 right now?
Close to 50% of the population is under the age of 21.
So it's a young country.
Correct. It's a young country, and that's striving. That's pretty much begging for opportunities.
Yeah.
I've worked with the young people in Haiti, and I've seen what they're having to go through. I've seen the choices they're having to make on a daily basis. When I was running this organization in outside of Port-au-Prince, it was very common for me to see kids that were 19, 20, well, not kids, but young adult, 20, 21, literally begging their parents to raise the money so that they could go anywhere but Haiti. So it ended up being around the same time that Brazil was looking for cheap labor to build stadiums for the World Cup, because they were about to host the World Cup.
Yeah.
To be followed also by the Olympics. So they came to Haiti asking for a lot of cheap labor. A lot of young people took the opportunity to go down to Brazil. You're talking about something like over 100,000 people.
Wow.
So, and then this idea again of using cheap Haitian labor is a result of capitalism.
Yeah.
You want to move ahead, you're going to step on somebody, exploit them really to be able to move ahead. So everybody has done it. So then once Brazil's economy started to go south, started to not do well, a lot of Haitians went to Chile. So because that was the biggest boom again in South America.
Yeah.
So you might have seen a few months ago all those Haitians that were stuck at the border in El Paso, Texas.
I remember.
A lot of them were literally walking all the way from Chile to make it to that border. And it's my understanding there's another caravan, or there's another group of Haitians migrants that are stuck right now in Mexico, because once the economies of those countries that welcome them go south, they usually kick them out.
Yeah.
Right? And what makes this group even more interesting is the fact that over 60% of them have a college education. You know, so again, which tells you that the youth in Haiti are just looking for an opportunity.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of the work that I'm doing or trying to do. You know, like I told you, my field is sports for development.
Okay.
You know, I have a few ideas, a few projects, but I also believe that whatever solution that's going to come out of this country, there needs to take into account that the youth in Haiti literally have two choices. They either join a gang, you know, which has become a huge problem right now, a huge security issue in Haiti in the last year or so, the last couple of years or so, or as we've seen, they have to leave. And you talking about the future, the brain of this country,
Yeah.
that are having to make those tough decisions. So again, whatever solution that's going to come out of it needs to be by Haitians and for Haitians.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And what is your project called? The one that you're running now, or that
So
you have run in the past?
so I would rather not mention the name of the organization that I was working for,
Okay.
but
Okay.
the project that I'm working on right now, it's a project that's similar to an academy in Ghana that was started by Manchester United scout that had
Okay.
gone into Ghana to scout talent in Ghana and
Beautiful.
realized, hey, those African kids, you know, they are as talented as the European kids. The only thing they don't have is the best training. They don't have access to education, nor
Mm-hmm.
access to the best training. So he
Yeah.
started his own academy and he named it The Right to Dream. You know, which to me is the perfect mindset, the perfect project for Haiti. You know, because kids in Haiti deserve to dream as well, or kids in Haiti, not just in Haiti, in any underprivileged society, deserve to have the same dream that
Yeah.
kids in the United States or kids in Europe have.
Yeah. You know what I
So
call these countries also? I don't like the term third world or anything like that. I call it overexploited.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a good
That's what
term.
it is really. And we see the potential, what other what other peoples are actually capable of going through college, leaving their country to have a better opportunity. Going to Brazil and being used for something that was temporary and then kicked out of the country. Then they have to move to Chile. Then they move from there to the US and get whooped like it was 1860, right? It's amazing, the struggles that you have been going through so constantly. But it shows also the fire that the Haitian nation has within, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's sad that that the reality right now is those two options, right? Moving along or joining gangs. This gang activity right now, is it due only to economic distress, or there's also other variants or other variables that we have to consider?
Very good question. So let's back up a little to 2010,
Okay.
right? 2010, the earthquake had just happened.
Yeah.
There was a lot of attention toward Haiti. Uh, People all over the world donated money. Uh, and it's my understanding they raised something like $10 billion, right?
Wow.
$10 billion. And then the United States intervened and pretty much took the lead on how the reconstruction was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, uh, the knock on Haiti was we're not going to give the money to the government. We're going to give a lot of that money to the NGOs because we trust them. We know a lot of the money went to the Red Cross. A lot of the money went to wherever, God knows where. But that was the thinking. A lot of the money also went into building luxury hotels. Because prior to 2010, Haiti had something like two, 3 or 4 star hotels. And then now all of a sudden in 2010, 2011, 2012, Haiti now has something like 4 or 5 luxury hotels because the thinking was, well, we have to build luxury hotels to attract the investors, right?
Yeah.
So that they can then come in, stay, and then invest in the country. Uh, also, as a part of that thinking, was we have to manipulate the election somehow to have a neoliberal pro-US government in place.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That government, we're talking about from 2011 to the present, came out to be the most corrupt government in Haiti's history.
Wow.
They have stolen billions. And in addition to that, they have been supporting gangs to serve as a way to, how can I say this? To suppress the areas, the communities that are anti-government.
Okay.
Right? So that's what's been happening. The gang issue is really a government funded. So that's really what's been happening in Haiti. So the gangs have been out of control. Haiti has had an arms embargo since 1994. Okay. Meanwhile, Haiti is being flooded with guns, like machine assault weapons coming from the United States.
Exactly, because the two countries that make most guns in the world is China and the US, and you don't have that relationship with China. So where are the guns coming from? You see?
Correct.
It's it's a simple question that you just ask, and anybody with common sense and critical thinking would conclude the same thing. It's ridiculous. It's hard to overcome, obviously, because you need a lot of political education or organization and making people understand that that those investments from those outsiders are really new ways of exploitation, right? Mm-hmm. They get what they want and they just leave it.
Correct.
Leave it afterwards. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And how do you compare? Because I'm amazed that you told me that. I knew this last government, right, from 2011 forward was corrupt, but not to the point where it was the most corrupt in Haiti's history. How do you compare that government to, let's say, Papa Doc's back in the day?
So the Papa Doc and Baby Doc dictatorship lasted 29 years, I believe.
Yeah, almost 30.
Yeah, but they didn't steal $1 billion. They didn't steal $1 billion. Well, it's difficult to say because there's been reports that I've read that said they've stolen $800 million, $900 million. But let's just say if they stole $1 billion or billions, it was over a period of 30 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now we're talking about money that should have gone to the reconstruction of the country. Yeah. That Haiti had gotten into a special deal with Venezuela called Petro-Caribe, and that's the money that's been stolen. And that money came out to be anywhere between $2 and $4 billion that was stolen or mismanaged, right?
I understand.
And when you add into the fact that, again, $10 billion was raised on behalf of Haiti by the international community to rebuild Haiti, why is Haiti today one of the poorest countries, if not in the poorest situation in probably in its history? Haiti is very poor today. So there's a lot of questions that needs to be answered.
A lot of questions need to be answered. I'm totally I totally agree. But I do like the project that you're working on, right, with these kids. Question about that. Have you been in a situation where you have rescued certain kids that were at risk of falling into gangs and you were able to help them out and play some soccer or any other sport, and they've been able to stay away from that due to your help? Or have you noticed that the gangs are winning when it comes to taking over these kids' minds?
Look, that's a very good question. So essentially that's what we were doing with the organization that I was working with. Yeah. Right? But we were working with kids between 8 to 18.
Okay.
And they were actually doing good work. They did a lot of community service. There was also a leadership program and so on. And that program was able to offer those kids a distraction so that they didn't have to join gang, right? But once they're 18, there's no work. There's no other opportunities. and then the gangs are using that to recruit the kids.
Yeah.
So that's the next phase of the project that I want to work on. That's going to solve that issue, because unless you provide an opportunity or a tool for those kids to succeed on their own, they're always going to join the gang, because that's what offers them the best opportunity to succeed today.
Yeah, that's you're thinking in the future, and that's good. Now it's you know what? I have a mentor here in Vegas that is a futurist. Shout outs to Kiri Awaru. He's a special person. He's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, and he knows a lot about history, right? And we talk a lot about the past, but sometimes I get tired. And obviously, I have to think about the past a lot as a historian, right? But I like thinking about the past when it comes to researching. But when we already know who put us in the pit, why are we arguing and spending time speaking on who did it, right? Or who did wrong, right? We could always point fingers, right? But I think we should concentrate as well, or invest a little bit more time on knowing how to liberate ourselves or getting out of that pit. Because the thing is that the entity that put you in the pit is not going to help you out. That's not going to happen, right? So we have to find ways on how to help. What is a good way for us that are not Haitians, that don't know the history and the context and everything that's going on within the country currently as well? What is the best way for us to help? Because I've always distrusted these NGOs. You have shown distrust as well. So what do you recommend for other folks to pinch in and help?
Well, that's a very good question. Look, if you are an outsider and you are interested in helping Haiti, you need to let me back up a little. So you might have heard over the summer that the president of Haiti was assassinated, right?
I heard. Yeah, so, I saw.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, there's a lot of rumors, and they seem to be almost accurate, pointing to people within his own party as the one responsible for his assassination. Why would you ask? Well, essentially, it's the corrupt oligarchy, or it's this corrupt party that got rid of him, because they put him into power, and then at one point he started to realize, okay, if I want to succeed politically in this field, maybe I should do something about the corruption. So that's what he started to do, and essentially he was gotten rid of, right?
Yeah.
So then you need to ask the question, how did somebody like that end up in power, right? So for reasons that we already mentioned, the United States has been interfering in Haiti's elections. The last two elections, which, has essentially facilitated for the PHTK party to gain power, and has held on to power. So in spite of the fact that the president was assassinated, many people in Haiti are essentially saying, hey, listen, maybe if the United States is really interested about solving Haiti's problem, maybe they should really listen to us this time and stop imposing on us governments that we don't like or we don't want, and especially corrupt governments.
Yeah.
Right? So to answer your question, this is what a lot of Haitians like me, or Haitians in the Haitian civil society, are saying right now. They're telling the United States to stop interfering and let us lead our own country.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's still being done right now, where the United States is still influencing this provisional government, who are, again, the same people from the same party that are in power. So if you want to help, if anybody who's not Haitian want to help, they need to be more involved, or they need to be more vocal in telling their constituents that, hey, let Haitians run Haiti.
Yeah. Yeah, you're totally capable of, right? And if they keep interfering, it means that they want to show the world that you're not capable, You see, and that's a very imperialistic way on how to do things, right? And how can you speak about freedom and fair elections when you have a mess within your own environment, right? And with that, and that same token, you're still involved in other people's business. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think Haitians are way more than capable of making things happen, because now you have way more opportunities than you did before, because you have all that youth, right? There's a reason why you have all that youth. Hopefully is used for, it's taken advantage of, in a positive way to overcome all of this. And how far do you see your project going? Do you have any ideas of what things you're going to implement afterwards? Especially these kids that are above 18 years old. What projects are you thinking of implementing to keep them off the streets? What plans do you have? Any ideas that you come up with?
Yeah, good question. So before, I'm going to get to that in a second, but I also wanted to add something about the root cause really of the issue that's leading to outside interference, right? Outside interference in our politics. A lot of it is also the fact that Haiti, as for reasons that we already discussed, is poor, and Haiti is dependent on aid. So this aid system to me is a problem. It's a problem because we having to depend on aid from countries that are imposing conditions for those aids, and a lot of it is, again, you have to put in power a government that those countries approve. So that cycle to me needs to be reevaluated. So the question as to why is Haiti poor and how do we resolve that issue cannot be resolved from my point of view without discussing reparation, slavery reparation, and also reparation for this illegal debt that Haiti had to pay France. Okay,
exactly.
So there's that, and then the other part of it is, I also think, sadly, Haitians outside of Haiti who have the potential to make a difference, there isn't a lack of people wanting to do good in Haiti, and a lot of them are Haitian Americans as well. But what they do is they come into Haiti, they do their own little projects, just like the other NGOs are doing, and then essentially you have a lot of little experiments that are not making a difference at all.
Exactly.
So what I would like, whether it's for my project or whether it's for a bigger transformational project, is for those Haitians, to come together and build and invest in the infrastructures of this country, and invest in universities, invest in sports infrastructures. Those two things that the young people love or wish they had in Haiti. So that's really what I'm hoping for. My project is, again, one project, which is to provide an academy, a soccer academy for the most talented kids in Haiti to succeed by playing soccer, or to at least maybe get scholarship to play in universities in the States, and then be able to achieve a higher level of education that way. But that's just one small project. I think we can replicate those type of ideas throughout the country and have a bigger impact altogether.
Yeah, so it's better off for us to identify what projects are genuine, that are working, that are practical for the youth, and invest on that and help replicate that. Basically, would be better off, right?
Correct. Specifically, project that provide an opportunities for those kids to be successful on their own tomorrow.
Yeah.
Whether it's education, or whether it's a sports project, or whether it's some type of a job making project.
It's teaching them how to fish and not give them fish.
Exactly.
Basically. Yeah. I agree. There's a Puerto Rican female. Her name is Isla Guerrero. I'm not sure how her project is right now. Currently from Puerto Rico, but she has done a lot for Haiti. She has traveled there plenty of times as well, and I understand she's done plenty of projects to help Haiti, especially after the earthquakes, right?
Mhm.
So I'm gonna try to contact you and her and see if we could all speak and see what could come up, come out of that. And obviously, you and I could stay in contact and continue having and growing this relationship. Um, this is also another testament, man. When we include females in our projects, things tend to blossom in a different way. For example, like you and I met because of Lidani, right? My girlfriend.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe you and I have a lot more in common, and we don't even know it because we don't know each other, right? But now, thanks to her, we're able to connect, and from there, do what's possible, right? For
Mhm.
us to help you and help Haiti, because I always have Haiti in mind. It's always been something. It's always been a topic of interest because of the example, right? Of what you're capable of doing, what you have done in the past, the example that you have become. I think that's the reason why all these empires tend to interfere with your business and politics is because the capability of Haitians,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, and when it comes to I've heard you criticize capitalism and criticize American politics, especially when it comes to international policies. Is there any political movement in Haiti occurring due to all this poverty and all this intervention and all this oppression? Do you see any political movement that's progressive moving forward in Haiti?
That's a very good question. Again, look, uh, about 3 years ago, there was massive anti-government protests going on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Haitians went as far as to literally put the country on lockdown.
Yeah,
You know,
I remember.
and you barely heard about it in the news in the U.S.
That pisses me off, man.
And
That pisses me off,
yeah,
really.
and you know why? It's because we were protesting a pro-U.S. government.
Exactly.
you know, uh,
Exactly. What Haitians were going through was way worse than what the Cubans were going through not too long ago. And then they want to, exaggerate what Cuba's going through. How
yeah,
come you don't talk about Haiti? It's been going through this for longer, right? It's poverty. It's even worse than in Cuba. What are we talking about here? It's man, the double standards, right? And in Colombia as well.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know how Colombia has their backyard in South America, right?
Of course.
So they were killing their own citizens, but that wasn't criticized in the media as much as it was in Cuba and Venezuela as well, right?
Correct,
So it's the socialist inclining countries that are the ones that we have to expose in the media and criticize because they're
correct.
evil somehow.
Exactly.
I've never heard them try to invade anybody. I never heard them trying to gentrify anybody or intervene in anybody else's politics. I don't understand it, right? So it's a lot of BS is going on in the media. It's sad. It's sad because it's not really journalism, right? It's just an
Correct.
opinion, just another opinion.
Exactly. Look, there's definitely I don't want to make it seem like I'm anti-capitalist or I'm
I
pro-socialist,
understand.
but
Yeah.
there's definitely certain aspect of both system that I feel that are positive. But most importantly, this is the message that I want to get across. It's up to that country to determine what system works for them. It's up to that people to determine whatever experience that they want to go through. And this is what Haiti unfortunately has not been allowed
Allowed.
to go through, you know, because what's happening right now is Haiti is, you keep hearing the same narrative. Oh, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, the
Yeah.
most corrupt, the most this and that and that. But we've never actually been allowed to go through our own experience and learn from the good and the bad,
Yeah.
and then essentially, you know, that's the issue right here. Those countries, whether you mention Cuba or Venezuela,
Mm-hmm.
or I guess now Honduras, they're having elections today.
Huge elections today. Yeah.
Huge elections today. So again, those countries should be allowed to go through whatever experience that they want to go through.
I totally agree. I
Um,
totally agree.
yeah.
Because they don't keep that same energy with China, right? You see the hypocrisy and the double standard.
Exactly.
And now China is a huge threat and everybody's scared just because they became that first superpower. That's
Yeah,
that's what a lot of people, especially from this side of the world, haven't accepted. And it's a topic, that would be discussed more within time. But
yeah,
is the richest country in the world. It has the biggest navy in the world now. It has the different weaponries are a lot more advanced economically. They're growing like no other country has ever grown in history. It's amazing what China is doing. Obviously, there's negative things going on as well.
of
But the
course,
thing
of
is
course.
that's what all our countries have thought about the U.S. and other empires in the past,
Exactly.
right? You guys are growing, but your growth comes to an expense of our labor and our oppression, and we can't tolerate that any longer, And
Yeah,
what are you afraid of now then? You know?
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And I would go as far as to add what China has done is amazing. I mean, they've taken hundreds, if not a billion, people out of poverty in a generation, and today, they have the most millionaires, in Asia, and yet they're socialists. So
I heard recently that they have the largest amount of billionaires in the world as well. I didn't know that. I don't know if that's true. I heard it recently.
well, I
There's a
would
lot
not be
of things that
surprised.
are going to be dismissed, and because of the competition, right? The nature of the competition. I think we're in a new Cold War. Is influenced by technology a lot and whatnot. And speaking about China, has China shown any interest in Haiti in any way?
Well, of course they have.
Yeah,
Of course they have. I mean, look, uh, we've had governments that were elected by the people in Haiti.
yeah,
Again, just thinking about dialing China, that were just punished for that fact alone.
yeah.
And look, and I also don't want to seem like I'm pro China, because I think essentially, um, the idea of an empire is that they're going to do whatever they need to do for
Exactly.
themselves,
I totally
right?
agree. I'm an
But
anti-imperialist.
exactly,
I don't like it regardless of where it comes from.
correct, correct. But unfortunately, we live in a world where uh, there's competition, and this competition, let's call it capitalism, because that's
Yeah,
what capitalism do, right?
yeah,
It's a race where everybody has to step over people somehow to get on top, right?
yeah.
Um, and countries like Haiti, unfortunately, are always going to be stepped on. What I would like eventually is to not be a part of any race, to just worry about ourselves and not having to compare ourselves with different countries, but other than the fact that we simply want to better ourselves. That's it.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah. That's the best thing you can wish for, right? Show the world what I'm capable of again.
Exactly.
Again, right? But just let me be, right? Get these obstacles out of the way because they're not necessary.
Yeah.
Your help is not really help. It's really slowing us down, really, right?
Correct.
Mentally, psychologically, spiritually. It's
Yeah,
something you have to let Haiti be and let her develop her own destiny and future.
exactly, exactly. And,
Wow.
and I would even go as far as to say, we're not looking to exploit anybody, to get ahead, nor do we want to keep being exploited as well.
Exactly.
We don't want to be a part of that system, period.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Very really interesting stuff, right? How history, I wouldn't say repeats itself, but it rhymes every time something happens, right? It's really similar to what happened in the past, and we're tired of it, especially when you know your history and you know your culture and your peoples and what they're capable of doing. You get tired of it, right? Of seeing the same thing over and over again, reading it in the books and then seeing it firsthand. It shouldn't be, right?
yeah,
We should be living in a different world where every human being is considered equal, right?
yeah.
That's really revolutionary in my eyes. So a little bit more of, let's talk a little bit positive aspects of Haiti.
Mhm.
um I remember going to Dominican Republic in 2016 for a few days after I went to Cuba for a month, right? And I like music a lot. I listen to a lot of music, and I remember in Dominican Republic, a lot of Haitians went to the convention that we had because it was pro of abolishing the embargo in Cuba. That's what it was. And the Haitians that lived in Santo Domingo were able to visit the university there, and they had some performances. And I heard some music that I'm like, wow, I feel like I've heard this in the past somewhere, but not really. You see, and I wanted to learn more. I don't know how musical you are, or how up to date you are with your country's music, regardless of the conditions, right? Every country has their own music, and they express what they're going through. How's Haiti's music scene now? I'm just interested in learning a little bit more, so then I could research and find my way throughout the good music that Haitians can offer.
I mean, look, music, as you know, was very influential in the country's founding when we had the big voodoo ceremony that would lead to the revolution. You know, with the drums beating. So it's without a doubt, drums music is a big part of the culture. It's a big part of the culture, which is why I guess right now we next week is going to be December, and pretty soon is going to be carnival season.
Okay.
So Haitians, I was saying that no matter the political situation, no matter the economic situation, we must go through a carnival.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea of how important music is into our culture. Yeah. So, but yeah, everything about Haiti, man. Like, the only Creole French speaking country in all the Americas.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you went to the Dominican Republic. Yes, whether it's Cuba or Puerto Rico or other parts of the Latin Caribbean, you guys have your own rice and beans, but you haven't tasted Haitian rice and beans yet. There's something. There's a black rice. There's a black rice. To me, that's my favorite. We call it Jui Jonjon.
Okay.
I've tried to figure out where that black rice comes from, because I don't even think it exists in Africa. I'm not kidding you, but somehow that's the best rice in Haiti. I hope one day you're able to come to Haiti and test our cuisine and compare it to other places that you have been to. Our music again is unique. There's group like Tabu Combo that have been around for 15 years.
Tabu Combo?
Yeah. There's group like Bookman Experience. Named after
I've heard about Bookman.
Exactly.
Bookman did initiate all that voodoo experience in Haiti.
Exactly.
But he came from Jamaica, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So there's a beautiful connection there that I've always been interested in.
Just real quick, I mean, Bookman, they believe he may actually have been a Muslim that knew how to read.
I've heard.
And apparently, like as you said, he was in Jamaica causing trouble, trying to educate people. So they kicked him out and sent him to Haiti.
True revolutionary.
And he was the one that led the Haitian Revolution.
Their huge mistake was to let him go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even though he led the revolution, but unfortunately, he got caught a few months afterward and was tried to make an example of by cutting off his head and putting it on the stick, leaving it in a public square so that people could not get the idea. But unfortunately, that didn't stop the slaves from revolting.
It didn't stop them from becoming what they were already, right?
Exactly.
And to influence other Africans in other places. Like Nat Turner, for example, was influenced by the Haitian Revolution. So we're talking about in a time and place where you couldn't call anybody. Nobody had a phone, right? But the word still got to the places that it needed to get to, right?
Exactly.
And special thing. I respect Nat Turner a lot and Bookman, and I'm reading a book now on Nani. She was a Jamaican Revolution female that led armies there with the Maroons, and so I'm reading on that now. It's a special history and that we don't know about. What other artists do you recommend? Maybe I need you to make me a list maybe of artists for me to follow.
No, yeah, I'll definitely send you a list afterward. But to start off with, if you wanna if you want to learn about that type of music, in Haiti we call it raga. Raga, if I'm not mistaken, I think in the Dominican Republic they call it gaga.
Okay.
You know, and essentially it's a style of music that derives from voodoo. Well, the message is very revolutionary still.
Beautiful.
Very influenced with drums, and Haitians love that type of music, love it. So Bookman Experience is a very famous Haitian group that plays that style of music called raga.
Interesting. So you're telling me that that fire, that revolutionary fire from a voodoo perspective still persists within Haiti.
Correct, without a doubt.
It's amazing. It's amazing. After hundreds of years, right?
Yeah.
Of being demonized and being oppressed and being, you still have that there, right? It's undefeated. It's undefeated.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, your conditions, your material conditions are not the best right now. We understand that, but that spirit within still lives. You're right. And with a country that half of you are young kids, right? And it's still there. That fire's still there. So there's something special behind that, right? That we have to dig in more. I respect it all. I respect it. I really want to go to Haiti. I like visiting places when I have friends from that space, right? Because I don't like the how do I say this? I don't like the struggle of the common tourist. I like skipping those steps. I want to go and see your struggles, right? And understand you and get to know you better. And when I say you is a hypothetical, right? I mean Haiti. I don't want to be in a Marriott and then having to step into a taxi and then figure out how to get to where the spice is at, right? And I understand people are fearful, right, of certain countries and whatnot. But you know what? If I die traveling, may whatever. I don't have a problem with that, is what I mean. And I'm glad that we got to meet, and I'm glad that you travel to Haiti regularly. And I hope I will visit your country soon, because we have a lot in common, way more than what we think.
Exactly.
For example, one of our original music called bomba, for example, is influenced by Haitians. You know, there's a huge debate on where bomba came from, and bomba is basically taking a rum barrel, right, and make a drum out of it, and play bomba, right? The thing is that the dancer dictates what the drummer plays, and the first song recorded in bomba was in Creole. Right, so that's really interesting. The connection between Haiti and Puerto Rico, right? We have a special spot in San Juan, which is the capital, called Santurce, and that was it used to be known as San Mateo de Cangrejos, and that was founded by Haitians. You know, that were in Puerto Rico for a long time. You know, last name Cortijos, Cortijo, Verdejo, Ocasio. All these are like French last names that come from Haitians that were coming in after the Haitian Revolution. So there's a lot of connections, you know, between both of our nations, right? And something that we need to learn and embrace because we are the same folks. It's just that we speak different languages and we were oppressed by different peoples. But in the end of the day, the oppressed are the same ones, right? The indigenous that lived in Haiti and Cuba and Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, you know, it's all the same indigenous folks and the same African folks as well, you know, from different parts, obviously, of West Africa. But in the end of the day, it's the same oppressed folks. So we need to embrace that, in my opinion.
I agree.
Get to know each other more, and that way we get to know ourselves better as well.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you so much for your time, James. This is your home. You know, you could always let me know whenever you would like to announce any other project that you're working on. Is there any websites that we could visit to be, to enhance our education on Haiti and help Haiti out in a better manner that you know of?
There's what do you call it? There's Haiti Libre, HaitiLibre.com.
HaitiLibre.com. Yes, yes.
That's very informative. And I also like Incultured Company. which is an organization that's trying to educate people both in the Dominican Republic and Haiti.
Okay.
And I like the work that they're doing. I can't think of any other website. Oh, there's one more called Haiti Bobo, but I'll send you a list afterward.
Okay.
So that you can look it up.
If you send me that list, I'll be able to share it with our folks back home, and whoever's interested in diving a little deeper has the opportunity to do so.
Great. I think that'll be great. And I also sent you a link of my project, so that you can also follow it up and so on.
Of course, James. I'm open, to any news that you have, any other interviews that you like to have as well with us, and you're always welcome. And I can't wait to visit your country. So maybe we should talk and organize that for the near future. Why not?
Yeah, definitely. So
yeah,
you're always welcome here, man.
Thank you so much. A todas esas personas que nos escucharon hasta este punto, muchas gracias, de verdad. Fue una conversación bien necesaria, en mi opinión, con relación a Haití. Voy a tratar de incluirle subtítulos. I'm trying to tell folks that maybe adding subtitles or something. I don't know if there's a caption thing in YouTube that may help when it comes to other languages. I'm not sure. Pero nada, si puedo incluirle subtítulos, lo haré. El que haya entendido la conversación, pues mejor todavía. Así que nada, les agradezco mucho, ¿no? El apoyo, y acuérdense en las redes sociales, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook como La Mogolla PR, y estamos en Apple Music o Apple Podcast, perdón, y Spotify como La Mogolla PR también. James, thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah, I'm going to try to say something in Spanish.
Of course, go ahead.
Pues, bueno, es una lástima que no podría hacer esta entrevista en español, con mi poco español, pero fue un placer para compartir estas informaciones contigo y con la gente que está escuchando.
Fíjate, James, tu español es mejor de lo que pensé.
Vale, pues gracias.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.